Hello, friends. It was late at night, probably well past midnight. The phone rang loudly in my ear. I was asleep, and had been dreaming that I was falling through the sky like a meteor. But now I was jolted awake, my heart pounding in my chest. It was an unknown number. On the other side of the line sat heavy silence. I didn't know what to do. Should I answer or not? As soon as I picked up the phone, a woman's voice spoke. Her tone was harsh and irritated. She said, "Hey, have you seen my cat?" I asked. "Which cat?" "My Siamese cat," she said. "What does it look like?" I asked her. "It looks like a normal Siamese cat," she replied. "You know, one of those fluffy white ones." I told her that I hadn't seen any cats and hung up. I went back to bed, pulling the blanket over my head. My heart was still beating fast, and I was very scared, but I tried to push all of that aside and fall back asleep. Then the phone rang again. Startled, I jumped out of bed. Was this some kind of joke? This time, instead of picking up, I just stared at the phone in disbelief. My hands were shaking. I didn't want to speak to whoever was on the other end of the line, but I was curious. Who would call me so late at night? Maybe it was a wrong number, but then why did they call again after I hung up? Thinking about it made me nervous, and I put the phone down on the table. I didn't pick it up. A few minutes passed, and just when I thought I might be able to go back to sleep, the phone rang again. I sighed and reached out to pick it up. "Hello," I said into the receiver. "Have you seen my cat?" A man's voice asked. It was the same question from before, but this time it was a man's voice. I responded, "I don't know what cat you're talking about." "You must have seen it somewhere," the man insisted. His tone was sharp. "Look, if you don't know anything, just say so. Don't waste my time." He slammed the phone down. The third time the phone rang, I let it go to voicemail. I didn't want to talk to either of them. Now I was starting to get really creeped out. There was something strange going on here. First, 2 people had called asking about the same cat. Second, their tones were rude, as if they were angry at me for something I didn't know about. Third, how did they both know my phone number? I didn't recognize either of the numbers that had called, so they weren't people I knew. I didn't think anyone knew my home phone number, except my parents and my best friend Emma. But Emma didn't live in this city. She lived in another state. So why were these people calling me? What cat were they talking about? And who were they? I was scared to go to sleep, but lying awake wasn't making me feel much better. It was just making me imagine worse things. Still, I didn't want to go to sleep because I was afraid that if I slept, I wouldn't wake up. I wanted to stay awake until the morning light. I didn't know if that was a good idea or not, but I did it anyway. Around 5:30 a.m., I heard a knock at the door. I froze. I had been half asleep and listening to music with my eyes closed when suddenly the knocking woke me up. I didn't hear the doorbell. Did someone ring it? I wondered. The knocking grew louder and more impatient. I wanted to ignore it and hope that whoever it was would go away. But there was something else about the sound that kept me from doing that. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but it sounded vaguely familiar. I walked over to the peephole and peered out. No one was there. I looked left and right, up and down the stairs, but I saw no one. I could see the front door clearly from where I was standing, and I was sure that no one had come in or out. Then I turned back to the peephole and looked again. That's when I noticed something. There was a small gap in the door where the wood had rotted. I had never noticed it before, but now I could see that the wood was black and crumbling. Had it always been like this? I didn't know. I pushed the door open slightly. A gust of wind rushed in, making my hair stand on end. I stepped outside. The door creaked behind me. The air was cold and damp. I took a deep breath and started walking down the steps. I walked onto the sidewalk and stopped when I saw the house across the street. The house had a wrought iron fence around it. I recognized it because it was the only house on the block with a fence. I had always wondered why the owner had built one. Houses in our neighborhood didn't have fences. They were never necessary. No one ever talked about them. And now I understood why. As I stood there looking at the fence, I realized why the sound had seemed familiar earlier. It had been the sound of metal scraping against metal. When the person on the other side of the fence had knocked on the gate, the sound had traveled through the bars and reached my door. I had been so focused on hearing someone knocking that I did unconsider that it might have been coming from outside. Then I noticed something else. The gate was open. Why had I not noticed that before? I was about to close it when I saw a pair of eyes staring at me from inside. The eyes were yellow and glowing. I screamed and stumbled backward. I turned and ran as fast as I could back to my front door. Once inside, I locked it and leaned against it, trying to calm myself down. I had to stop letting my imagination run wild. It was just a cat. Yes, that's all it was. Some animal rights activist had gotten the wrong number and called me by mistake. But even as I said that to myself, I couldn't shake off the feeling that I was being watched. I decided to call my best friend, Emma. She lived far away, but I always felt better when I talked to her. She picked up on the first ring. "Hey," she said. "Is everything okay? You sound scared." Yeah, everything's fine," I lied. "I just got a weird phone call from someone who thought I had their cat. Then someone else called and asked the same thing. Then someone knocked at my door, but when I opened it, no one was there. But I could have sworn I heard the sound of someone knocking on a metal gate." "Wow, that is weird," Emma admitted. "Well, maybe you should change your number. You never know who has it." "Maybe you're right," I said. "Thanks for listening, Emma." "Anytime," she said. And we hung up. After we said goodbye, I called my mom. She listened patiently as I told her what had happened. "That sounds strange," she said. "Are you sure you've locked the door? If someone's out there trying to break in, you should call the police." "Mom, no one's trying to break in. I just thought I should tell you what happened." "Okay, sweetheart, whatever you think," she said. And then we hung up. My mom was right. I needed to lock the door. I walked over to it and turned the deadbolt. It clicked into place, and I felt safer. I went to my room and threw myself onto the bed. I needed to get some sleep. I closed my eyes, but sleep wouldn't come. I kept thinking about what had happened. Why had I received those calls? Who had they been? And why had they asked about a cat? Suddenly, I remembered something. We had had a Siamese cat when I was younger. Her name was Luna. My dad had adopted her from an animal shelter. He wanted to surprise me with her for my birthday. When I came downstairs that morning, she was sitting in a basket with a big red bow on top. I remember loving her soft fur and bright blue eyes. But then something strange had happened. We had moved into our new house and Luna had gone missing. We searched everywhere for her, but she was nowhere to be found. My parents assumed that she had been stolen, but I refused to believe that. I was convinced that she would turn up soon, but she never did. Could it be possible that Luna had come back to me all these years later? If so, why had she waited until now? I didn't know the answers to any of these questions, but I wanted to find out. So I got up and went to my computer. I searched online for Siamese cat rescue groups in my area. I figured that if Luna was out there somewhere, one of these organizations would know about her. I printed out all of the contact information and made a list of phone numbers to call. I started with the first number on the list and asked if they had a Siamese cat that matched Luna's description. The woman on the other end of the line laughed and said, "Why would we have a cat that looks like that? We only take in strays." I apologized and hung up. The next number was a private residence. I hesitated before dialing, but then I went ahead and did it anyway. A man picked up. "Hello," he said. "Yes, I was calling about a Siamese cat named Luna. Does she live here? Who wants to know?" he asked suspiciously. "My name is not important," I lied. "I just wanted to see if you had a cat matching her description." "Why are you calling about a cat?" "Because I lost one a long time ago and I think I may have found her," I said. "She lives at my house, but I don't know if her owners are looking for her or not. If they are, please tell me and I will return her to them." "Where did you say she is?" "She's at my house, but I don't want to say where I live on the phone. If you really think she's mine, come here and I'll show you a picture of her." I gave him the address and thanked him. I hung up and hurried to get ready. I grabbed my car keys and rushed out the door. On the way to his house, I thought about what the man had said. How could he be so sure that Luna was his cat? What if she wasn't? What if she had just looked like his cat? I didn't know what to think anymore, but one thing was certain. I had to find out the truth. When I arrived at the house, I hesitated before knocking on the door. It was a large brick building with high walls all around it. I didn't know what to expect when the man opened the door. Was he going to invite me in or try to keep me out? I wasn't sure. But when I knocked, the door swung open and a woman stood in the doorway. "Hi, I'm here about the cat," I said. "Come in," she said without saying a word. The house was dark and smelled like old books. The man was sitting in a chair by the fireplace. "Can I help you?" he asked. "I'm here about the cat," I repeated. "Which cat?" he asked. "Luna, the Siamese cat," I said. "Do you have her?" The man stood up and walked over to a bookshelf. He pulled out a photo and handed it to me. In it was a young girl holding a Siamese cat. The girl looked a lot like me. I looked back at the man and asked, "Did you know my sister?" "Your sister," he echoed. "What sister?" I had never seen this man before in my life, but for some reason I trusted him. I handed the photo back to him and said, "Thank you." As I turned to leave, he called out, "Wait." I stopped and turned around. "You're not going to tell me where she is, are you?" he asked. "Tell you what?" I asked. "Where's the cat?" "Cat?" he whispered. "There's no cat," he said. "There never has been." I backed away from him, my heart pounding in my chest. "What are you talking about?" I whispered. "I thought you had my cat," he said. "I thought the same," I replied. "We both thought the same thing." The man smiled. "It's always darkest before it's completely dark," he said. And with that, he lunged at me. I screamed and tried to get away, but it was too late. He had me pinned to the ground, his eyes boring into mine. "You shouldn't have come here," he hissed. "Now you'll never leave this house alive." I struggled against him, but his grip was like iron. I couldn't break free. I closed my eyes tight and waited for the end. When I opened them again, the man was gone. I got up and ran to the door, throwing it open. I was in a dark, narrow hallway. At the end of it, I could see a faint light. I walked toward it, my footsteps echoing in the stillness. As I approached the light, I could hear voices. They were talking in hushed tones, their words just beyond my hearing. I reached the end of the hall and peeked around the corner. What I saw made me gasp. It was the two people who had called me on the phone. They were standing over a body on the floor. It was the man from the hall. He was lying face down, blood staining the carpet beneath him. Beside him was a pair of scissors. I didn't want to scare them, so I stayed hidden. I watched as they argued in hushed tones. "He's dead," the woman said. I saw the look in his eye. He wasn't playing. "So what do we do now?" the man whispered. "We can't stay here. The police will find us. Where will we go?" "Anywhere but here," the man snapped. "I'm sorry, but I have to go now." I turned and ran as fast as I could back down the hall. As I ran, I could hear them behind me, their footsteps pounding on the floor. I didn't dare look back. I didn't want to see what was coming for me. I ran and ran until I could hear their footsteps fading away. Then I stopped and turned around. I was in the same room that I had been in before. The door was open. Outside, the sun was shining brightly in the sky. I took a deep breath and walked out into the light.